Hey everybody, what's going on? It's James here with Crypto Common Sense, and I have your Bitcoin / cryptocurrency update for Saturday, August the 1st. So I wanted to do this video because obviously Bitcoin and crypto as a whole has just been a wild ride these last couple of weeks. And at this point, I just think it's really difficult to start trying to call tops or to even really get an idea of what this thing is going to do. You know, technical analysis, I'm a huge believer in it, and it is, in my opinion, it's, highly reliable in about 99% of cases. But right now, technical analysis, at least my technical analysis, it just ain't doing much good, right? It's really, when you zoom out on the bigger time frames, it's still in play, but, it's kind of like I said last week in the video, when I look at the charts, I see a lot of bullish patterns. I see a lot of bullishness, but none of it's taking into account the broader global picture that's going on. And so I'm going to talk about what I am kind of doing right now to keep myself safe, and also how I intend to play this market going forward, because you can only sit out so long. So before I jump into the content, please do me a huge favor, hit the thumbs up button on this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't already, please check the description. You can find a link to join the Patron. That supports the channel and helps to keep these videos coming. The Patron, right now I think we're around $350 or $400 a month, maybe like $500 before fees. So still only halfway there to the goal, the $1,000 a month. Once I hit that, I'll start doing 3 videos a week and make sure to keep everybody very well informed. So, the first thing I want to talk about here is the fact that obviously Bitcoin is now sitting up close to $12,000. But what concerns me about Bitcoin, and it does concern me, and I'm still a bear, that's not going to change, by the way. If somebody's wondering, like, what's it going to take to change this guy from a bear, I won't change. And it's not about being a perma bear. It's about, the market right now, it's kind of in this euphoria stage, right? So a certain price movement or a certain pattern in the chart is not going to suddenly shift my bias from, being bear bias to suddenly, joining the bull party and drinking the crypto Kool-Aid. That's what happened to me in 2017 is I got flipped. I got flipped from a conservative trader. I got flipped from somebody that was doing very well, following my own system, following my own stuff. And I eventually let everybody get to me, and it's on me, not them. So I would never mention people by name. But it was just nonstop. So much bullishness, so much talk of Bitcoin going to $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 that eventually I made the biggest mistake of my financial life, and I moved the majority of my profits that I made back into Bitcoin instead of leaving them in fiat. And of course, that seemed like a good idea for the first 2 weeks or so, because I did it right in the middle of December, but it didn't take long to realize that I made a catastrophic error. So, same kind of thing now, like all this price movement, it's herky-jerky action and it's euphoric action. So what I mean by that is anybody could have taken a blindfold, put it on their face, and randomly picked a cryptocurrency, a precious metal, or a stock, and they had a very good chance of making double their money or 50% returns or some type of massive returns. So it's not just crypto that's in this really weird place right now. It's basically the entire ecosystem of these markets. And I think it's setting up for probably the biggest disappointment in the last 100 years. I'm still of the same belief that I think we're going to have a Great Depression version 2.0. If I'm wrong, great, that's wonderful. But I don't think I am wrong, and I'm gonna stick to my guns, because that's what made me a lot of money in 2019. Right? Was sticking to my guns when everybody else was talking about the new bull market and new all-time highs and all the other nonsense that was being touted, and I was that lone wolf out there. There was a few of us talking about, no, this is probably going to go back down to $4,000, and I got beat up and I got verbally abused and I got all these things for sticking to my guns throughout this entire period but eventually I was vindicated, and I still feel the same way. I think I'll be vindicated again. I know a lot of people are watching these videos going, this guy's an idiot, right? This guy is still a bear. He still refuses to, see the forest through the trees. And maybe that's the case. But if you guys remember a few weeks ago, I said that, this looked like a falling wedge to me, which was a bullish pattern, and it broke north, right? So I see the patterns. It's not that I'm ignoring the patterns and not bringing them to your attention. I'm just not trading them, right? I'm not going to risk my money on this market because I personally feel like it's extremely overbought. And I don't want to be putting my money into an overbought market. If you go and you look at the fear and greed index, we're in extreme greed right now. We're not in the fear phase. We're not even in the middle. We're in the extreme greed phase, right? And typically the rule of thumb is you don't want to be buying at the top of these market cycles, or obviously selling at the bottom of the cycles, right? So the one thing about being bearish, I guess, is people only see one side of the coin. They see like, okay, well, he's always calling for these moves down, right? But I wasn't selling back here in March. I added a little bit to my portfolio. It wasn't a lot of money, but I put a little bit of money in the market back there, which I talked about in the videos, right? And that money has done well over the last few months, but it's like I was talking in my Discord today. I still feel like they're paper gains. I'm really not counting on them. Like when I sit down and do my budget, I don't even count that money because the reality is I don't believe in it. I don't think it's real, right? I think it's still going to crash. I think it's just, a euphoria type of deal. So let's talk about these charts, right? This is a 3-day chart. This is that falling wedge that we talked about, while it was happening, came down, had the third touch, hit it a fourth time, even hit it a fifth time over here, right before finally springing up. But if this was indeed a falling wedge, that's what you would expect. What was a little bummed out was when it first broke out of it, there was really low volume, and the volume really didn't come until here, and it came all in one candle, right? So that made it kind of difficult to trade. But also, if you guys remember, I had pointed out that we did have this W forming back here, ended up getting almost like a triple there. So, you look at it now, RSI is up to 74, 75. RSI is not the end all be all, but you got to take into consideration here. We're now sitting at the highest level in RSI that we've been since when? Since the summer of 2019, right? We're at some really extreme levels. And in fact, April of 2019, and this is worth mentioning, when Bitcoin first broke out of this, range back here, or through this accumulation is really what it was, right? When it broke out of that, this is about the level that it hit before it started to grind sideways a bit. It didn't pull back down. It did keep going back up. So maybe we get the same type of action over here, right? Look at this breakout candle. See the volume? Very, very close. Look, let's put the volume on there. See this? Very, very close to this breakout back here that led to this. So again, I see bullish stuff on the charts. I'm just not going to trade it. Right? And when I say I'm not going to trade it, I'm talking about on a larger time frame. So I'm not going to take a long position where I'm trying to ride $12,000 Bitcoin to 15 grand or 16 grand or 18 grand. I would much rather miss that and not put myself at risk, right? I understand there's stop losses, there's all that kind of stuff. But if I'm going to be doing all that, I'm going to be doing it on a smaller time frame. I'm going to be trying to catch the 1 hour, the 4 hour moves, the 5-minute moves, the 15-minute moves, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go to bed at night sweating over what's Bitcoin doing while I'm sleeping, okay? And that's a trade-off that you have to make as a trader. Everybody's a little bit different. But me personally, where I stand right now, I've got that little HODL portfolio or hedge fund or whatever you want to call it, right? It's a couple of Bitcoin. And so, and again, when I say a couple of Bitcoin, I'm talking about value. It's made up of altcoins and Bitcoin and whatnot, right? So I've got that. If I'm wrong and this thing keeps skyrocketing north, I'll probably throw a little bit of a party because, I do have that. And, hey, if Bitcoin goes with 75,000 or 100,000 some days, sweet, right? But the thing is I don't have to miss the entire move even if I'm wrong. I don't just have to sit on that HODL portfolio and say, well, I was wrong. I guess I just missed out. There will be a pullback on this. It's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. Even if this is a new bull market, which I strongly, believe it's not, But even if this is a new bull market and it's not just kind of some last gasp, but the bubble bursting, it's going to pull back at some point. That's what markets do. They always pull back, right? It's just a matter of when and how much. And in this case, if we are at the top now, even if it only pulls back to the golden pocket, which would be a little bit confusing because it would leave gaps, but even if it only pulls back to the golden pocket, that's still down around $7,000, right? So maybe if it puts in some bullish structure, if it pulls back down here and puts in some bullish structure, maybe I would think about going long on a position trade. But I have no interest in $11,000 or $12,000 Bitcoin, none. The interesting thing is if this thing does pull back, right, and if this does end up being the top, and again, I think it's super dangerous to try to call tops when markets are completely euphoric. There's a reason that cliche exists. Markets can stay, I don't even remember, they can stay irrational longer than you can say solvent or something along those lines, right? This market has lost all touch with reality, as have the other markets, which I'll talk about in just a second. But maybe, and I think it's kind of blown this structure a little bit, but maybe it does end up pulling back down here and putting in some kind of wonky head and shoulders. It's possible, right? So there's a lot of what ifs. But I think right now for most people, it's not a great time to be buying Bitcoin, right? It's just my opinion. It's not advice. But had the big breakout on volume, and then it just immediately dried up. And if you look at the daily charts, the RSI on the daily is now sitting at 85.3. To put that in perspective, again, that's up around the summer of 2019 levels. It's also up around the breakout levels back in April of 2019. But we're already extremely overbought, right? And we're leaving these nasty gaps all over the place, right? These are the same type of liquidity gaps that had me so bearish last year when I kept saying, 4,200, because of this huge liquidity gap right here, right? This is what I was waiting to get filled in, was this gap right back there. And look where it stopped at. Came down and pinged right off of it. Well, we've done it all over again. We've created a liquidity gap right here, right, which is existing back around $5,452. We've got one right here, which is existing right around $7,800. We've got a liquidity gap back here, which is existing right around $10,150. You go over and you look at the CME chart. There's not just liquidity gaps. We have actual open air gaps hanging out over there, right? This is an actual gap. Look at this. Just a huge gap sitting there that needs to be filled. $9,700-ish, right? What's interesting about this chart is no one's talking about it anymore, but there's only one other gap that I've noticed on the 4-hour chart. There's no other gaps on the daily chart, right? There's actually a tiny smidge left of this one. The other day I looked at this and I thought it had filled, but it's actually off by like $5 or $10, right? So I'll talk about that in a second. But the other gap, this is the only other gap, right, on the daily. And then on the 4-hour, this is the other gap. And where's it at? 35.70. Still not filled. It's the only CME gap that hasn't filled on the 4-hour chart. It's these three gaps right here, okay? And guys, I don't know where Bitcoin's at right now. I haven't looked at it really today, but okay, so it's up around 11.8. Well, something I mentioned in my Discord last night is the fact that what happens when the CME opens tomorrow, right? You see how it didn't quite fill the gap in it, got up to 11,775. Would not shock me one bit for this thing to open up here somewhere, right? And then come down, right? Have another gap, little baby gap, come down, fill that in. This would be filled in then, and then, not necessarily head straight back down, but then make its way back down to fill in this gap down here. Would not shock me one bit. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a bear market or that this isn't a new bull run. It could still be a new bull run, and you could still get that type of action because this thing needs to cool off, right? It's moved too far, too fast, which is becoming the story for Bitcoin. And quite frankly, it's becoming very obnoxious, right? The market, ever since the CME got involved, the market has been hardcore manipulation. Now, every market has manipulation, and you have to understand that before you start trading that market, right? Stocks have manipulation also. Forex a little less manipulated because the liquidity is so huge, it would take trillions of dollars to really move it, right? To really be able to manipulate it, so to speak. But crypto and stocks and everything, heavy manipulation. And when the CME got involved in crypto, it became much, much worse, right? That's when things really got to be hard to call because, you look back here, you had this area of accumulation and a lot of people, myself included, we were, pretty excited about this. We were looking for some type of move up and then a little pullback and then a move up and a nice steady uptrend that we could ride for the next 3 years. Again, you're talking about early 2019. A lot of us thought, hey, this is the bottom. We'll get in here and we'll ride this for 3 years and we'll ride it to the new all-time highs. And instead it did this herky-jerky nonsense where it went almost straight up, went parabolic, right? Hockey stick type of pattern. And when you get a parabolic climb, it's almost always followed by an 80% retracement. Not to the 61.8, but an 80% retracement, right? So if you measure this from the bottom back here to the top, there's your 80% right there. And if you look, where did this candle close at? Right at the 80% retracement. Literally closed right on top of it. That was textbook technical analysis. It took forever, and it was herky-jerky as shit, and there wasn't a nice steady downtrend that was real easy to short and just ride all the way down. Instead, you were having to move in and out, in and out, in and out. Put in this fake high right here, just like it did in 2014, right? It made it very difficult to ride it. You really had to work for the money. And then when we got down here, a lot of people like myself, still hoping for a bull market, but bearish at the same time, hoping for some sideways action. I made plenty of videos about this. I made posts on Twitter about it, posts on social media about it, saying, look, I'm not in a hurry to buy here, not in a hurry to load up big. If this is indeed the bottom, we should see sideways movement and we should see accumulation. We did not see any accumulation at all. None. No sideways movement. All we saw was this bullshit rocket right back up. And I'm not, angry about it, but yeah, it's a little frustrating because you're trying to trade this market like a normal market. You're trying to trade this market based off of, hundreds of years of technical analysis, right? And then you get this stuff. You get this V bottom type of stuff. And that's what people are calling it. They're saying, well, it's a V bottom, it's a V bottom, it's a V bottom. Guys, the problem with crypto, and I've noticed this more and more the last, 12 or 15 months, and it's really why I haven't been on Twitter at all the last couple of weeks, right? I've just completely stopped logging in Twitter. You have a lot of people who trade crypto who've never traded anything else. Maybe they have a little bit of Forex experience, but mainly a lot of crypto traders, especially the loudest ones, they don't actually trade anything else. So when you talk about a V bottom, you've got to go look at the stock market and say, what's the stock market doing, right? And you got to understand what a V bottom actually means. And it's driven by increased consumer demand, increased consumer spending, yada, 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 right? We don't have that, right? Not in reality. I'll talk about the stock market in just a second. So that's the reason that I'm so bearish on this. I think that we're filling in this gap. I do think we're still going back down. And, if I'm wrong and this is, a bull market, like I said, I still expect it to pull back. This was a parabolic climb. How far is it going to pull back? You tell me, right? 80% is the rule of thumb. Maybe it pulls back there, maybe it doesn't, right? But like I said, over on the daily chart, when you take a look at this thing, you've got gaps way down here at $5,400, right? So if we put a fib on here, and we don't know where the top is, but just with what we have available to us, look where that 80% is. It literally lines up almost perfect with that gap. 54.64 is where the 80% is, and that gap is at 54.52, about $12 difference, right? So that's the reason that I'm not trying to chase this. I'm not concerned. I'm not in panic mode. I simply don't care, right? Because I know with enough patience, the market's going to come to me. It's the same reason that you look at guys like Warren Buffett, who's on a totally different level than everybody, right? He's been sitting in cash since March, and he's been ridiculed for that by certain people saying, oh, look, he's really screwed up. Look at all these gains he's missed. But the thing about Warren Buffett is he's not playing the game that most people are playing. He's not playing the I'm going to day trade or I'm going to swing trade on 3 days in and out, right? He's playing the I'm going to buy the bottom game. I'll wait. I'll let everybody do their thing. And when this thing finally comes back down, that's where I'm going to buy at, right? That's how he works. He can be extremely patient because he has huge reserves of cash, right? They don't have this, need, if you will, to get in and out of the market because they have money, right? But this thing has broke out of this, channel. So again, you look at that is bullish in nature. So again, maybe the top's not in, maybe this thing's going to go a little higher. Maybe not, right? The biggest problem that's making this, in my opinion, the most difficult right now is the fact that it's tied itself to stocks, and it's tied itself to a market that's being more heavily manipulated than any time in history that I know of, right? If you guys aren't aware of this, especially for those of you outside the United States, the United States ran a deficit for June that was 100 times greater than the deficit we ran 1 year ago in June. We literally spent more money in June of 2020 than what we should have spent in 10 years. I have no idea how we come back from these things. I have no idea how anyone in a position of power thinks this is a great idea. But see, it's not about being a great idea. It's not about being what's best for the country or any of that. What it's about is winning an election, right? Now, again, I'm not going to get into politics on this channel and say who I do and don't support and all that kind of stuff. All I'm saying is that right now, the country is, in my opinion, suffering irreversible harm, right? Because they're just handing money out like it's going out of style. So what we had, for those of you that don't understand this, for those that don't know this, what they did was they passed the stimulus package a few months ago, and one of the parts of that stimulus packages gave this added federal unemployment benefit. Okay, usually in the United States, when you get unemployment, you get it through your state. And so, for example, where I live, the maximum unemployment before all this was $250 a week, right? Which is, we'll just call it $1,000 a month. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, you can't live on that. No, of course you can't. The unemployment's not meant to replace your income. It's basically meant so that you can buy groceries, keep your lights on, things like that while you're looking for another job. It's not meant to replace your income. You're supposed to have 90 days of living expenses put away. That's what every financial expert will tell you. Unfortunately, most people in the United States don't because they piss their money away or they don't save money. They'd rather have a new iPhone, blah, blah, blah. But, that sounds judgy, but I'm not trying to be judgy. I'm speaking facts. I come from a background in finance. I know what people do. I've watched them do it. I've watched people sit in front of me and justify buying a car they can't afford, at the expense of, well, we'll cancel the kids' soccer because then that'll help the car payment out. That actually happened when I was in the car business. So essentially what happened was the federal government passed a stimulus package, and a lot of these people, instead of getting like $250 a week, they were getting this extra money from the government, which I remember right, I think it was $650. So now you have people who, maybe it was $600. Okay, so $600. So you have people who, might have been making, say, $10 an hour at their job, which if we do the math, roughly we'll call it $1,600 a month. After taxes, Social Security tax, all that kind of stuff, they might have been bringing home $1,200 a month. And that's what they're used to making. That's what they're living on. Maybe the husband worked, made $1,200, maybe the wife worked, made $1,200. So, okay, so they got $2,400 in the household, right? Well, now suddenly husband and wife both get laid off. Husband and wife are both making $800 a week. Well, that's $1,600 a week times 4. Now you've got $6,400 coming into this household that's used to living off of, maybe a third of that. And that money starts getting pissed away. It starts going into buying things. For example, my brother owns a car dealership. He's only owned the dealership for a few years. He owns half of it, roughly. And the dealership itself has been there for about 20 years. They've had their best 2 months in business ever, by far. Because people are out here with all this extra money, spending it. And then on top of that, these families were giving, they were giving these families thousands of dollars in stimulus aid, right? So the husband might have got $1,200, the wife maybe got $1,200, and I think they were giving them $500 for each kid if they met a certain income level. So now this family's got $3,000 or $4,000. Now I saw this all the time when I was in the car business. Every year our biggest season was tax season, because you have these lower income families who would get these massive tax refunds. They called it earned income credit. So if they had like 3 or 4 kids, some of them were getting like $7,000, $8,000 tax refunds. They didn't even pay that much taxes in. They were getting free money. So they would come in and put down these big down payments and buy cars. In some cases, pay cash for cars, so on and so forth. It was always our biggest season. Well, we had that again this year, right? Instead of just getting tax refunds, everybody got this free stimulus money. So everybody was out there buying cars, buying televisions, buying whatever it was they were buying. And what does that do? Well, that's a ton of cash flowing into the economy. That's a ton of cash. That's a ton of consumer spending. Now, what did I say earlier about a V bottom? You need consumer demand and consumer spending. Well, that's what they did. They gave everyone, not everyone, because not everyone qualified for it. You had to make a certain amount of money, like less than a certain amount of money. But they gave all these people who, I don't even know how to put this because it's going to sound bad. But a lot of people who are on the lower end financially, they tend to be maybe not as intelligent about how they handle their money because they've never been taught how to handle their money properly or how to budget properly, right? And that's not a dig because I actually come from a lower income type of background myself, right? When I was growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money and stuff. But what I'm saying is a lot of people grow up with a mentality of whatever they have, they spend. If they have $1,000, they spend $1,000. If they have $5,000, they spend $5,000. If they have $10,000, they spend $10,000. They don't grow up with the mentality of, hey, I should be saving this or I should be investing this, right? But anyway, all this money gets dumped back into the economy, and that's how they increase the economy and increase this consumer demand. Well, the reason I'm talking about that so much is because those unemployment benefits, they ended yesterday. The Congress, the government couldn't come to an agreement, and those are done now. Those people who were used to getting that $800 a month or $800 a week, done, over. They don't get it now. It goes back to the regular unemployment, which again, in many states is going to be like, $1,000 a month versus $800 a week. So that's gone, right? The other thing that was happening was you had a lot of like college students and younger people who were just getting started with investing, right? Well, same deal. They might have been working at like McDonald's or delivering pizza or whatever. That's what I did when I was in high school, was I delivered pizza, right? I lived on my own when I was 17. That's when my dad passed away. So I went out, got a job delivering pizza. I worked about 30 hours a week doing that. And then I went to high school. So a lot of young people were working these jobs where they're, again, making $1,000, $1,500 a month. Suddenly they get laid off because of Corona, and suddenly they're getting this unemployment benefit. And wow, look at all this free money I got. And you go to Robinhood. That's what, that's the app that's really, really popular with millennials, really popular with young people. And a lot of that money started getting piled into trading. A lot of that money started getting dumped into Robinhood and buying these different stocks. And that's the reason that a lot of these stocks have lost all touch with reality. You'll see a company like Hertz go through bankruptcy and suddenly their stock's pumping 300%, 400%, 500%. Doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not institutional money doing that. That's, people gambling with quote unquote free money, right? I mean, literally, that's what it is. I had a friend of mine who made quite a bit of money in the stock market. He's a new trader. And he actually told me, I don't really care, dude, because the money, whether I spend it on this and lose it here or whether I spend it at the store, either way, it's going to get spent. So whatever, I'm just going to have some fun with it. Well, that's what he was doing. He was gambling, right? So the markets are just crazy right now, guys. It's really, really crazy times. You look at gold. Gold's sitting here at its all-time high. I talked about this in my Discord as well this week. I don't think gold is being driven. I don't think it's fear that's driving gold to $1,900 or $2,000 an ounce. I don't think it's fear at all. Some people are saying, oh, this is fear, this is fear, this is fear. And, I think I did feel that way up until it got to about 17 or 1800. And then I started to shift and I realized that this is FOMO. This is pure, simple FOMO, right? If we look at this thing on a weekly chart, it's absurd. Let's look at a monthly chart. Look at this level. Do you see where we're at? We're at these same levels from 2006. We're at these same levels from 2008, right? And look what happened right after that. These crashes in gold, right? I think that people are FOMOing into this because they had all this free money and it was like, why not? You look at silver. Silver's up, it peaked at about $26 an ounce. Highest point it's been in 7 or 8 years. You look at, and I'm not going to go through every single stock, but you look at, I think I did this last week, but if you start looking at some of the stocks, you'll see stocks that are just They've lost all touch with reality. Tesla's a really great example, right? Came back down here right here, had a really nice bullish retest of its 200-day moving average. That was definitely a spot that would have been fair to invest in Tesla. It would have been like, hey, if you're going to get in Tesla, this is probably a good place to do it. And yes, moving up wouldn't have been all that absurd, but look at how much it moved up. This is since March, right? 412% in 3 or 4 months. And like I said, you can go through and you can look at a huge number of blue chip stocks. You can look at, the majority of cryptocurrencies. Like, let me show you another example, right? So Zcash. Let's look at Zcash. Well, there you go. This is the daily chart for Zcash. There you go. Went up $20 in one day, which was about 20%, right? Zcash was sitting down around $18 in March. Now it's over $90. That's 4 or 5x return. Let's look at OMG. So here's OMG. Let's not use Coinbase because it just got listed there not long ago. Let's use Binance. So here's OMG. It was down around 29.30 cents in March. Peaked out back here around 227 and got up to over $4 on Coinbase. That was like a 12 or 13x return. Let's look at Stellar. Stellar, I bought some Stellar. This is one of the few alts I did buy in March. I bought it at 2.7 cents. Well, here it was in March. It actually bottomed just over 2.6 cents. Now Stellar's up at 10.7 cents. 4 or 5x return. And I can do this over and over. Here's Ripple. Most people I talk to hate Ripple. I own a little bit of Ripple. It's a very, very small portion of my portfolio. Most people tell me how much of it's a junk coin. It has no use case, blah, 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 right? It's a scam coin, whatever. Who cares what you think of it? Look at this. Since March, what did it do? It's up 170%, right? You can go through alt after alt, and almost all of them that have any basis in reality at all are up 100%, 200%, 400%, 500%. Bitcoin itself is up 300%. That's what I'm saying. That's not what you see at the bottom of a market. Bull markets typically happen when most people have given up hope on an asset, right? When the average investor has decided that it's a lost cause and they should just, take their ball and go home. We're not seeing that in these markets. What we're seeing is euphoria. What we're seeing is what you typically see near the top of a bubble, not near the bottom of one. So that's why I'm so bearish, guys. It's really not about the chart, because when you look at the chart, right? If you just look at the chart and you take away all the fundamentals and you take away the corona and you take away the stock market, and if we were just looking at Bitcoin, the chart looks pretty damn good, right? Even on a zoomed out time frame, like this is a log chart on a monthly time frame. One of my biggest concerns was that this was actually complacency. If you guys remember, I did a chart about this saying that this actually might be one giant bubble where this is the A, this is the B, and then the C is going to come down here, right? Way down there. Not that far, but way down, right? It's looking less and less likely, because when I look at this looks like a W to me, right? It looks like a really good W. So if I was just going off of the chart, I would be very optimistic about Bitcoin, but I'm not. It's not the chart that makes me bearish. It's the global picture. It's what's going on with all markets, gold, silver, stocks, crypto. Everything is overbought and something has to give, right? It can't stay like that forever. Now, it can stay like that for a while. It can stay like that until, all shorters have completely lost everything they had, right? Because I still don't see any reason that I would want to run in and short the market right away, right? There's nothing that says, short me, right? There's just a whole lot of, man, this is really overbought and this is looking like it's going to be really painful when it finally comes crashing down. And again, if you look at the zoomed out time frame while the chart looks good and everything, you'll notice down at the bottom here, RSI on a monthly level has never fallen below 40 on Bitcoin. There's never actually been like a real bear market, like on a monthly type of chart. Now, what I mean by that is we have had bear markets, because bear markets are basically defined by periods of, panic and 20% drops and things like that. But what I'm saying is we've never seen Bitcoin actually, go down in these oversold territory on a monthly level. It's never been oversold. Never. What we had was the double top back here, and we had another double top here, and in both times they came down and bottomed right around this area. So is the bottom in? Maybe, right? If you look at the chart, it's pretty interesting. But like I said, when you look at the global level, it just doesn't scream, you know, expose yourself to more risk. And like I said, you have to remember when you're watching these videos, my financial situation is very different from most people's, because I've been self-employed for a decade. I do have, you know, an emergency fund, a rainy day fund. I do have other investments, and I do have, you know, a little hedge fund, HODL portfolio, whatever you call it, with that couple of Bitcoin worth of crypto. So if I'm dead wrong and this thing explodes, you know, I'm not left out in the dust. But if you're somebody that's brand new to this and you don't have any crypto, you know, puts you in a totally different situation that's a lot more stressful, because you're trying to figure out, do I buy here and risk going down, or do I just say, you know, screw it, I don't care, I'll miss out if I miss out? And I understand your situation is different. So please understand that my situation is different, and that's the reason that I'm able to be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more like, whatever happens, happens, right? I'm going to make my money through trading this, whether it goes to 100,000 or whether it goes to 1,000. There's always trades available, right? So that's one of the reasons that I like trading. I can get in, and I haven't been trading lately. Like, I've taken the last month off. But, you know, you can get in on a trade. You can get out 15 minutes later, an hour later, 2 hours later, whatever it is, depending on what type of trader you are. And you don't have to worry about all this stuff about, oh man, what's Bitcoin doing today? You know, I did not sleep well in 2017 or 2018 because I was holding so much crypto. You know, at one point I had about $250,000 in crypto. And so every time I went to sleep, I would literally wake up. I would have the phone right by my head, so that if Bitcoin started moving, the alarm would start going off, like the dings and stuff, and I would hope it would wake me up. And then I actually had a software created and programmed that I could set alarms that would just keep going off, right? So that I would wake up at like 3:30 in the morning or 5 a.m. or 1 a.m., whatever it was, when Bitcoin started going crazy, so I could run to the charts and try to figure out whether I should sell it or what I should do. I don't know that I ever want to go back to that. Right? That was not a fun time in my life. It was very, very stressful, and it probably aged me 10 years. Whereas what I do now, very laid back. Sometimes I don't even look at a chart. I might be up at 7 a.m. and I might not look at a chart until 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I don't take my phone to bed with me. My phone stays in my office. If Bitcoin moves overnight, well, that's life. I'll wake up and I'll figure out what to do when I wake up the next day. So that's kind of where I'm at with all this stuff, guys. I'm just not chasing any of it, right? One thing I do want to point out, and I know the video is long, but it's probably going to be the weekly update. One thing I do want to point out is on the weekly chart, this is the last line of resistance, right? As far as price, I feel like it's busted through pretty much everything, right, on this weekly chart. We're now above, I guess it depends on where this week closes at, but if you look at where price is right now, we're above last summer's prices, right? Really, the only weekly closes that were higher than this was the top back in 2017. And if you look at this downward sloping resistance line, this is it. If it cuts through that, there's really no resistance left, right? I mean, maybe a horizontal resistance up around 78 on the weekly or so. Also, if you look at the monthly chart, let's put this back in a candlestick chart. If you look at this monthly close on a non-long chart, there's really nothing about that says bear, right? Nothing. Not, again, this all goes back to the whole thing that when I look at charts, it doesn't look bad. It's just this global picture. Because when I look at this, what I see is I see this huge tail. And when this happened, I remember talking to my friend David about this, and we were just like, man, maybe that's the capitulation tail that we were looking for back here that we never got, right? Because normally at the bottom of a market, you get a huge tail like that. So you have this capitulation tail. Then you have this move up. This is actually a higher high than this. It was a higher high. Then you have this higher low, followed by, what may be a higher. No, it is. I was thinking it was higher high. Threw me off here because there's no new candle yet. But yeah, this is a higher high. This month closed. So you have high, higher low, higher high. What is that? And that is a textbook uptrend on a monthly level. That's not exactly a time frame to ignore. That's a big time frame. So it does look like an uptrend. There's no doubt about that, right? On the monthly chart. And when you look at a weekly chart, same type of deal, right? It's taking out this high back here. It took out these highs back here. This is definitely an uptrend, right? And again, if you follow the uptrend target, where this is like an ABC type of move, your target's up around 15 grand on this thing. So a whole lot can happen. And the real pain in the ass, okay, is this election business isn't until November. So it's entirely possible, and this is what I was saying last week, it's entirely possible this thing presents itself as a quote-unquote bull market. It pumps all the way up to 13, 14, 15 grand, and that the real pain doesn't actually come until after the election in November. That's 4 months away, right? 4 long months away. So what will I be doing? I'll be watching it close, and I don't really plan on cashing out any of the HODL portfolio. You know, even though I think it's going to pull back, even though I think it's probably, you know, got a retracement due. The only time that I would consider cashing out that HODL portfolio is maybe, you know, after the election, if things start to look really, really bad, I might consider cashing out then. Before that, I probably won't. And, you know, I've rode that thing up and down quite a bit. That thing was actually down to, you know, like $6,000 or $7,000 in March, right? Because it was, like I said, it's made up of some alts and some Bitcoin. And so in March, it got all the way down to around 6 or 7 grand, right? And from wherever it was in, you know, February, I think it was up around 20, 25 grand, something like that. So I wrote it all the way down. I didn't panic sell or cash it out or anything. I just held it because that's what it's for. It's to hold. But if, you know, closer to the election time and stuff, after the election, that might be a time that I consider selling it if it looks really, really bad. Other than that, I'll just hold it, right? And if Bitcoin goes up and goes crazy, hopefully it's worth a few $100,000 someday. I'll cash it out and consider myself lucky to have, you know, punched a lottery ticket. But for right now, I'm still waiting for any type of long-term investments. And, you know, I've had people private message me, hey, are you short? Are you short? Are you short? Not on any type of positional trade, I'm not, right? I'm not short on any type of positional trade. If I do take a trade, it's going to be on a smaller time frame, an hourly chart, a 4-hour chart, something like that. I don't see anything, you know, on these bigger time frames that are signaling a top yet, right? Now, there might be a top, don't get me wrong, but, you know, there's no bearish divergences on the daily. There's no bearish divergences on the 3-day. I mean, there's just selling here or shorting here is really just like one of those things where somebody's gambling, saying, well, I think the top is in. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Okay. So this video is very, very long, and for that reason, I'm probably not going to do hardly any editing at all. So if there are some mistakes, I apologize for that. But watching these videos 2 or 3 times to catch those mistakes is just, it's a huge waste of time. All right. So if you guys see something glaring, please feel free to point it out. I can do some light editing on YouTube after it's uploaded, and I'll be happy to fix it. But I don't think I made any mistakes. So we'll just let this one slide live, or semi-live, recorded live, whatever you want to call it. All right. With all that being said, guys, please remember that I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. So nothing in the video is financial advice. Nothing in the video is trade advice. Obviously, you should always seek out professional investment advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, or precious metals. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and consider joining the Patron to support the channel and get access to more frequent updates. This is James with Crypto Common Sense, reminding you to please trade safe.